First off, let me be very clear, there are many other ways to track someone besides a GPS tracker. There are many Wi-Fi and Bluetooth type of tracking devices that can be used in much the same way, albeit not quite as accurate. A good example are those little tile tracker things. Many people will use these on their key rings so they know where they left their keys the night before, or they'll use them on luggage or other items. The technology behind these devices allow the tiles to talk to each other, to phones and other devices using the tile and other software and other devices. So the tracking portion generally tells an individual the location of the last time it was observed, not necessarily where it is now, even though it is not very accurate, like to the precision of a few feet. It often allows people to get a good idea where to start looking for it, and these devices are very small, slightly larger than a $50. For the sake of this video, I'm talking about whether a private investigator can use a GPS or any similar electronic tracking device to track someone. So regardless of the technology, if it is tracking someone, it is covered here. Now let's also look at the logistics of the usage of GPS trackers by private investigators. The most common usage for these types of devices is on a person's vehicle. Let me be very clear about one thing again. This is my opinion. I am not an attorney. I am not providing legal advice. In my humble opinion, the tracking device does not provide evidence of where a person is or where they have gone. Let me say that again. The tracking device does not provide evidence of where a person is or where they have gone. In fact, the tracking device does not provide evidence where the vehicle is or where the vehicle has gone. The tracking device provides information on the location and the places where the tracking device is and where it has gone. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. So if a private investigator uses a GPS tracker and relies solely on the software and the mapping capabilities to show where someone has been, who someone has been associating with, or what activities they may be involved in, well, folks, that, in my opinion, is highly defensible in a court of law. It does not prove anything except that maybe the tracking device was at a certain location at a certain time. The GPS tracking device system does not track the person, it tracks the device itself. Now, I know this may sound a bit nitpicky, but in our legal world, and that is where us professional PIs work, the legal world, it has almost zero grounds to stand on in court as evidence. Now, granted, civil matters, it may bear a little more credibility where the outcome is based on the preponderance of evidence rather than the higher standard of criminal matters where you must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So if a PI's client is just looking for some proof to satisfy curiosity, then sure, the data provided by a GPS tracking device may be acceptable evidence for them, but is it legal? And if it is legal, why doesn't the client just do it themselves and save some money? Why hire a PI at all? I think the answer to that second part, why doesn't the client do it themselves, lies partly in the client's own doubt of legality of the usage of GPS tracking devices. They often do not know, and they end up deferring their question to a PI and assume they are getting sound legal advice. So let's get back to these little devices that can be easily deployed on just about any vehicle that we affectionately refer to as GPS trackers. These little buggers can be very small. Their batteries can last for many days, weeks, and even months or years. The premise behind a PI using this is that they can safely and discreetly follow or surveil their target subject and gather video or photographic evidence at a distance, which sounds logical, sort of. But let's take a look at the potential legal ramifications of using these devices. First question in my mind is this: is the PI committing personal property trespass or any other type of trespass while attaching a GPS device to a vehicle? There are a lot of varying opinions of this, I am sure, and I would love to hear yours. Go down in the comments below and let me know. From my viewpoint, I would be trespassing on a person's personal property, the vehicle, if I am placing something on it that belongs to me. I am not even talking about trespass of real property, like going onto their driveway or into their garage. That is a huge concern of mine as well. And as a general rule, we private investigators cannot gather evidence through illegal means. Thus, if we are trespassing on real or personal property, we could be violating that premise of evidence gathering, as we may be breaking the law just placing the GPS tracker on the car. One of the arguments is if the vehicle is owned by a married couple and one gives permission to the private investigator to put it on their spouse's vehicle. This very well may be held up in a court of law if the usage of a GPS tracker in itself is allowed, as there is already quite a bit of case precedents already set on this. A good example, if the police go to that couple's house and one of the two allow the police to enter, then they legally can enter without permission of the other person, who very well may also be an owner. But that does not give the police carte blanche authority to start searching the entire house. So the big question, is it legal for a private investigator to use a GPS tracking device on their subject's vehicle? The big answer is, well, it all depends on many differing factors. U.S. federal law, for instance, is quite silent on the topic. I really believe one day they will decide to take this up to the highest levels, but until then, we are at the mercy of our state and local laws. So the first thing you must do is check with your state laws. Many states have laws that outright disallow the usage of GPS trackers by private investigators. Some states have laws that outright allow the usage of these devices, with certain rules being applied and for certain purposes. And some states have laws that say nothing to the effect or regard of their usage. For many states, regardless of whether they have GPS tracking laws or not, there are other laws in place that help curtail certain activities when it comes to using a tracking device. One way to look at it is that tracking where someone has gone is one thing, but surveillance on them may, depending on the activity level of the surveillance, become threatening and may be covered under harassment or stalking laws. Therein lies a huge risk of the private investigator who uses these. They run the risk of being seen by the subject of their investigation at every location they follow their subject to, thus leading the subject to become in fear for their life, as they may feel they're being stalked. If your tracking software takes you to a strip mall parking lot with a grocery store and 10 other stores, the software does not tell you where the subject went. It just leads the PI to the car. So usually foot surveillance would follow to gain more intel and video evidence. Then if the subject goes to another shopping center with multiple restaurants, the PI has to once again go on foot surveillance to find the subject and see who they are with. Again, exposing his identity to the subject. And let's say next the subject stops at a pharmacy and a couple other quick stops on the way home, and there is the investigator trying to find them again to confirm their location. After a few times, the subject realizes she has seen this PI several times and starts to get worried. Now she starts driving a very circuitous route on the way home. She goes through some random parking lots really slow, notices the same car with dark tinted windows coming in shortly after she did and driving right towards her car. So she runs into a store and she calls the police. Now, I know I took a perfect case scenario to look at, but this could happen in any type of case that you are working. You must weigh out the risks and the rewards involved for your case and your business. I have been told by many a PI that this is why I carry insurance. Well, you know what? I carry insurance too, a lot of it. And I have never had a claim, and I hope I never have to have a claim. This is the perfect lead-in to the secondary question. Is it legal to use a tracking device in Colorado? It is probably easier for me to answer the question, is it illegal for a PI to use a GPS tracker in Colorado? The answer to that is no. It is not illegal, at least at face value. Colorado has no laws on the books at this time of me recording the video disallowing PIs to use GPS trackers for surveillance. Colorado does, however, have several court cases that have set precedents in the past. Let's take a quick look at a couple of these. The first case is from 2010 in Weld County, Colorado. This was a couple of years after I started working as a PI, and I am officed in Weld County, so this was right in my backyard. And I remember the news coverage well. The PI placed a GPS device on a woman's car as he was working for her estranged husband regarding a child custody matter. The PI followed her for some time before she found the device attached to the bottom of her vehicle. After she became aware that she was being followed, she contacted the police, who subsequently arrested and charged the private investigator with stalking, stating the victim has suffered severe emotional distress. And the client was arrested for stalking as well in this case. Now, if memory serves me correctly, this later got pled down to harassment for both. but only after considerable time and cost to both. I don't know if the PI had insurance or not, and I don't know if insurance would even cover legal fees in a case like this. There was another case very similar to the one in Will County a few years later in the metro area. It was very similar in nature. The PI was arrested for stalking and later pled down to harassment. Regardless of the end charge, both the arrest for stalking and the guilty charge of harassment is on their records forever. Neither of these individuals, to my knowledge, ever worked as a PI afterwards either. Their actions led to the demise of their PI careers.